I mean, it is a ridiculously small amount of surplus, and we're just skating on the margin. We are one big lawsuit loss away from being in big trouble. And so for the general prospects, but then again, after our train wreck years, we worked very hard to establish good accounting principles. And one of them was to move from borrowing money to pay as you go. Tonight, we couldn't even get a second to keep on the pay as you go track from the Finance Committee amendment. So, you know, I think there's no hope for us, and I will be voting no on the budget. I'm sure it'll pass, and at least I get to go to Bermuda on Sunday and not have to worry about this dragging on. But I think we're hopeless. I really do. I'm quite depressed. We make cuts and then we immediately spend it.
Alderwoman Pendel Charles.
Yes, thank you. Alderman Arnett, do you have a proposal as to what we should do with the $90,000?
No. No. I think we need, 90, I think we should be looking at things with many more zeros after it than $90,000. But we'll face that next year, and I think we'll look back and rue actions taken tonight. But it's only 1 out of 9 votes.
Alderman Budge.
So I would like to point out that what we are discussing here is a trimmed down version of the Finance Committee amendments that Alderman Arnett already voted for, without suggesting any funding mechanism, and that I suggest we take that with a grain of salt.
I have suggested funding mechanisms, many of them. The most important one is to make use of the programmatic budget. Why do it? And why give priorities if we're not going to go there when we need to find cuts? We should be looking at those things that are ranked as number 4 priority. There's more than enough money to do a lot of things in those number 4 priorities, but we do all of that work and then we just reject it. So, you know, again, I don't think we can act responsibly.
All in favor of the motion to add $90,000 to community grants, please say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it. We'll now move on to, I believe, the last.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. On the community grants themselves, we have a recommendation from the Community Grants Committee on how to allocate those the initial mayor's budget for the community grants. I recommend to my colleagues that we remand the question back to the committee to come back to the council in July with an allocation based on the increased funding, and we can take up the details of how we allocate it at that time, with one exception that we'll get to shortly.
Alderman Littman.
I think if I could make a proposal, Alderman Budge, we have from the requests the median of prior to funding allocation at 302. Adding the 90,000 to the mayor's budget of 205 obviously gets us to 295 instead of 302,500. But my suggestion is we just take the proposals as they are and then ask the administration to just do the math to make it proportional, to dial it from 302,500 down to 295, and just take that number.
I would rather hear the wisdom of the committee.
Okay. I support Alderman Budge in that. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
we'll get there.
But I think what Alderman Budge was alluding to now is rather than us go through each one and say, here's how much each group's going to get, have the committee come back and take it up at a later time.
But we're adding a new category for them to consider.
Correct.
Or potentially.
We're going to talk about it.
Correct. We'll talk about it. And we're going to do the budget amendment next. Alderwoman Finlayson?
Yes. In these recommendations, however, there are some anomalies. If you will recall, and I'm not going to get into the specifics, but some were not recommended to get any funding. Some then received total funding. So I'm not sure what direction we're giving the committee.
I think the direction is there was 200,000 in the budget. Now we've increased that $90,000. So go back in to say, are each group going to get more money? Are the groups that were cut out going to get more money? How are they going to evaluate it?
You're not understanding my question, my statement. There are some that got no money.
And they can look at that to see if those groups should get now that we have an extra 90,000.
And there are some that got, in those same groups, those same organizations, in the last column, got the maximum. So there is some in-between amount or some decision, because some of those decisions were made based upon programs, where they're located, whether they're in the city, and what kind of services, even there, if they're out of the city, what kind of services. There were some different things that were considered. So we're going to just ask the committee to make their best guess.
Alderman Budge?
At the Finance Committee meetings where we discussed the committee allocation, representatives of Finance who are also on that committee were present and hopefully taking notes, and can reflect back the concerns of the council back to the committee, so that they will reflect some of the discussions that we had, or they will certainly consider the discussions that we had when they come back to us.
We'll let Nikki, and then I'll go to Alderman Arnett.
I just wanted to comment on the community grant allocations. After the Finance Committee meeting, when we heard from members of the council regarding our initial allocation of funding when it was at the $205,000, we did listen very clearly, and we applied some of the criticisms that we got for our original funding when we did the allocations based on the 400,000 and then a 302.5. So there were organizations that didn't receive funding that all our people had commented on. They've since, in the revised columns, received funding, and we did make an effort to maximize the funding towards the organizations that are going to mentor, that are going to educate, that are going to help alleviate some of the violent crime issues that we're having with adults by getting them when they're young.
Thank you. And I'm knowing that you do have the notes, I'm sure you'll be able to figure it out. It's not a straight percentage cut or anything like that you'll be able to do. I would ask you to give consideration, special consideration, to those groups that have to get the matching funds, like the Annapolis Youth Services Bureau, for example. Thank you.
So I wanted to support the comments made by Alderwoman Finlayson. In fact, the biggest advantage we get is funding at all, because that gives them the local match, and we get huge leveraging. And so I think it's worth going back to look at those that didn't get funding on the first cut, particularly those that are geared to helping in communities where the services just aren't available from any other source. So I don't know how many of those zero funded ones fall into that category, but since there's this $90,000 to slosh around, huge $90,000, maybe we should go back and look at some of the people that didn't make the cut to get that leveraging. But that's just a suggestion. It was the sense of the Finance Committee discussion.
The final amendment from the Finance Committee is to fund sidewalk repair out of current revenue of $677,000 to amend the CIP to include $260,000 as other sources for FY 2017. All right, then I guess there's no need for that. So we'll move on to the final amendment, which is the budget amendment.
I think there's more, but
We'll get there, and the budget amendment is turned into two amendments.
Okay, we'll go to the,
The budget amendment number one is amend the operating budget
All that.
community grants by adding a $2,200 grant to the Bloomsbury Square Residence Council for the purpose of resident parking passes for members. That will be funded out of the $90,000 that we just approved. I asked the council consideration of the rest of the council on this one. Needs to be implemented because these parking passes have to be issued by July 1st. And if the funds are not there by July 1st, parking tickets will be issued. So this is not something that can wait into well into the summer for us to continue to do. The committee is familiar with the question. We considered, excuse me, the council is familiar with the question. We considered our 2515 to address the same problem for the 2015. And the law is suggesting we approach the question of grants. And the basic issue is that the residents of Bloomsbury Square are being asked, the Hake property, are being asked to pay Ward 1 prices for the parking passes, and that's a hardship.
thank you, Alderman Arnett.
let's see, do we need a motion and a second? I second.
Any discussion?
Well, the one question I have, and Joe, you've probably thought about this, is are we establishing a precedent? Are there going to be other communities of any ilk that are going to come in and ask for the same kind of consideration under community grants? Is this a unique situation, or are there more to follow?
There are only two wards that presently have HACA properties that are in special residential parking districts. And when we considered R25, it was very clear that the residents of the parking district that are in Ward 2 were not especially fond of the proposal. And so while yes, this sets a precedent, I don't think it's a precedent that's going to be taken up upon. Whatever. Sorry, Sheila, that's bad English, but and you know, I don't think it's something that we're going to need to worry about.
There's another precedent we're establishing, because the notion for the community grants is we give it to agencies that are providing community services and they need a local match. This bears no resemblance to that kind of purpose for community grants. This is a flat-out gift to the residents that live in these areas that are having to pay these parking fees. There's no going out and taking care of people with drug habits or things like that. So it does strike me as being a little awkward in the community grant pile, but maybe that's just me at 20 of 12.
I see this more as similar to grants to help with translations or help with with job training. This is a grant to help people with transportation. They need their cars to get to work. They need their cars to get to shopping. They need to get their cars to get to school. They need their cars to get to a lot of these services that we're funding with other grants. It's part of the ecosystem, if you will, that we're trying to nurture.
Alderman Payne?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They have to pay $55 in all likelihood to have their oil changed. They pay hundreds of dollars for car insurance every year. Probably hundreds of dollars in maintenance costs for the cars. I'm not unsympathetic, but I think $55 is a reasonable price. And in Ward 2, we have a terrible parking problem that's only going to get worse in the immediate future. And while this doesn't take care of those folks in Ward 2, I could see them coming in here very quickly and asking for the same deal. The neighborhood doesn't want it. If you can afford to have a car, it may be hard, it may be difficult, but I think coming up with $55 annually is not an unreasonable amount of money. Thank you.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
You know, everyone around this dais is extremely blessed and privileged. Unfortunately, everyone in the city is not. And it really concerns me when we take actions with little regard, little sympathy for those who are in the greatest need. We have imposed any number of fines and costs on people who clearly don't have the means. We are the city government, and we have a responsibility to care about all of our residents. $55 might not be a lot to us, but it is a lot to some people. And we don't know what kind of cars they drive or what the condition of their cars may be, or who's fixing their cars and whether they even have to pay for that service. But we should be a little concerned about everybody. And this legislation says that we care about everyone. It's not going to break the bank to give the residents of Bloomsbury Square free parking. It's just not. You know, they have a problem with people in their community who park there who don't belong there. So giving them the stickers for the parking preserves their spaces. So I think we should show a little humanity here and think about the guys who are not seated where we are.
Alderman Littman?
Thank you. I disagree that this amendment would show that we care about everybody. I think it would show that we care about the residents of Bloomsbury Square, which I think is partially the point of my colleague from Ward 2. I'm not going to support this, not because I don't care about those residents, but for the reasons stated by the alderman from Ward 8. Unless there's offsetting cuts for this purpose, I don't think we should be further using the cuts that we've already voted on by very narrow margins.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. All right, the ayes have it. We now go on to... Yes.
A second amendment I would like to offer. In previous discussion tonight, we voted to remove the position and classification of Deputy Harbor Master from the position and classification in R10. We need a matching amendment to take the money out of the budget. Otherwise the budget is still there. So I move that we take $30,000 out of the Harbor Master salaries budget in order to accomplish that.
Is it Harbor Master or the Deputy Harbor?
Yeah.
Discussion, Alderwoman Pendell-Charles?
It's late. Alderman Budge, I missed something. Say that again. Please.
Okay, in R10, we voted to eliminate the position in the position classifications for the deputy harbor master. R10 does not, is a human resources document. It does not reflect in the budget. So what I'm suggesting is we have the, my proposed amendment recognizes the dollars that we are saving in the operating budget
For that position?
for that position.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
That was my question. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Alderman Arnett?
So, we're unwilling to get into the take-home vehicles because we don't have data, but we're dealing with this really very complicated, garbled, we're eliminating $75,000, but we're reappropriating whatever it is, 45,000 to compensate the watch, the 3 watch people for their extra hours. Is that the math that's hidden underneath all of this? And shouldn't we have some way of showing that expressly in the budget? I mean, I know Joe does it at the aggregate level, but there's a lot of moving pieces there. And it's all guesstimation.
Alderwoman Pendle Charles?
If what I'm hearing you're saying is that we haven't made allowances for the watchmen, is that what you're saying, Alderman Arnett?
Apparently we are. I just don't know what they are. We eliminated a $75,000 job
Right.
with benefits, but it really is only $40,000 that we've eliminated, so the rest of that money stays in the harbor master in Parks and Rec's budget to somehow be allocated to extra hours or what, I don't know, the watch commanders. And all of this is not very well documented.
Maybe let the city manager answer this question.
Thank you.
The reduction will be taken in the overall salary and wages category, so the money will still be there to make the adjustment for the contract. I'll take care of it.
Other discussion on this amendment? All in favor of Alderman Budge's amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No?
The ayes have it. Now move on to, I believe, the last one from Alderwoman Pendle Charles for job class description.
Yes. Chief Pursuit, can you come forward, please? This was a discussion that we had several months ago about this alcohol beverage control inspector. And I know you indicated that this was not something you necessarily asked for, but it may be something that you could avail yourself of. Could you please kind of elaborate?
Yes, for sure, we will. The city has 113 liquor licenses, so having the liquor inspector under the police department would really help us in a number of ways. And we work independent of them in some inspections processes, but having that extra help under our roof could be very beneficial.
Did you have an opportunity to look at what Ms. Hopkins had prepared regarding the job position?
I did not personally read the job position. I think we had some input on that. So, yeah, and I reviewed some of what we had put in, but I don't think I saw the final copy.
Do you know what the price tag on this one is?
Well, we had originally estimated, consistent with Anne Arundel County, about $25 an hour. We were hopeful to get 2 inspectors. I don't think the city's concerned with how many inspectors. It was approximated about 20 hours a week. So between that, I think it was a $35,000 cost essentially with weekly offset expenses, about that. That was our estimate. I'm not sure where it came in the last conversation. I think Mr. Andrews was waiting for our written proposal, and I think it was pretty consistent with $34,000. Did I answer the question right?
I guess so. At this juncture, I guess possibly, we're down to the nubs. One inspector.
Well, we could, we looked at the workload and we looked at what we would expect of them. Certainly one inspector, whether one inspector worked 20 hours or 15 hours, or two inspectors worked 20 hours, that would be somewhat a maximum. But I think what we would do is go into it, you know, with caution. We would see what we need. We would not want to overspend our allotment. We may get it done with less spending.
Is this beneficial as far as monetarily, as far as having another inspector out there?
I think I think to have another inspector too.
I'm talking about one. I mean, just
Yeah.
as one even.
Yeah, no, I think the amount of the funds could either be used for one or for two. I don't think it matters necessarily how we would do that, and I do think it's beneficial that we would have this inspector for sure. I think the inspector would be earmarked specifically for alcohol issues. I think there are enough concerns that we have in the city that we would want to do just that, use them for alcohol inspections.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
other issues that relate to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Chief, don't we have liquor inspectors now?
No, what we have is we have officers that work in the criminal intelligence section in the police department that do some quasi inspections, but we're really doing code enforcement. Well, what we're doing rather is criminal enforcement of underage sale of alcohol to minors and other matters that relate to the crimes that occur. But we're not doing the same type of inspections that code enforcement does. DNAP had
In
budget.
DNAP, we did have liquor inspectors, correct?
They did have, they don't have now.
Could we ask Ms. Broadbent to come up? Because I don't understand why the liquor inspectors we had in DNAP are not now the liquor inspectors in APD. What's different?
Good evening, Maria Broadbent, Director of Neighborhood and Environmental Programs. So the funding is in the DNEP budget, and through a number of things, including some studies about code enforcement needs downtown and things like that, the decision was made when this got moved over a few years ago that what the city was funding in DNEP was a deputy property maintenance code enforcement person whose responsibilities were after-hours inspections and the alcoholic beverage control inspections. So that's the position that's funded in DNEP. We've had some instances where we've had it filled, but we've had trouble filling it under the, you know, that broad range of responsibilities, and really we were looking for hours that most people would rather be maybe patrons, but we were looking for people that were working Friday night, Saturday night, and things like that. So the funding is there, but we have not had anyone in the position for a while. We've been satisfying the ABC inspections with one of our property maintenance code enforcement officers.
So you have funding for one code inspections officer who
Contractual, and we try and keep them from going over 30 hours.
So the funding is there, but no one's in that position currently?
That's correct.
So, Mr. Andrews, can the funding for that liquor inspector be moved to APD where the position is now?
Remember, we're going to have to process a massive budget amendment this summer to put the reorganization, this is a part of, into effect. Once this budget is adopted, hopefully in the next 10 minutes, we'll come back to you in July with the finance committee with a massive budget amendment to put into effect all the moving parts of the reorganization.
So
this
does
will be a
that
part
mean
of
the
it.
answer is yes to my question?
Okay.
Will you move the funding that was in DNAP into the police department for the liquor inspector?
Yes, we'll be moving that money to the police department.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So there is funding for
There
one
is funding,
liquor
yes.
inspector?
Yes.
Currently? Okay. Does that make this amendment moot?
Does that make this amendment moot, Mr. Andrews? Then the amendment is moot,
Okay.
unless Alderman Budge has a comment.
I don't think the amendment is moot because you need to have the job position
Okay.
in the police department in order to have put the liquor inspector there.
Okay. Okay, so we don't have to worry about the funding for it,
Correct.
but we do need the job description for it.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Alderman Budge.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All, can we have a second for the motion? All those in favor? Alderman Littman?
Would you restate the motion, please?
I believe the motion is to add the job description for the liquor inspector to the budget. Correct. And Mr. Andrews can move it internally with the money.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. And I believe that is the last amendment we have, unless anybody has another one. All right. Is there a motion to... Is there a motion? Yeah, I think. Is there a motion to adopt O 3615 as amended on second reader? O 1316, I stand corrected, on second reader.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Is there a motion to adopt O 13?
Roll call, Mr. Mayor.
We're about to do it on third reader.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adopt O 1316 on third reader?
So moved.
Is there a second? Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Panalidi,
Aye.
Alderwoman Kendall Charles,
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson,
Aye.
Alderman Littman,
No.
Alderman Kirby,
Pass.
Alderman Arnett,
No.
Alderman Budge,
Aye.
Alderman Payne.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next legislative item on the agenda is O 1416, pertaining to the capital budget fiscal year 2017.
Is there a motion to adopt O 1416 on second reader? Is there a second? All right, we have three budgets here. The Budge Panelides proposed amendment, the Cornhill Street, and the Budge proposed CIP. I thought we did all these.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, these amendments are identical to, they are the same amendments that we discussed earlier this evening, and with respect to the CIP resolution, we're now dealing with the ordinance. I hereby move all three amendments in one fell swoop so we don't have to rediscuss them.
Thank you very much. Is there a second? All right. Third. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Is there a motion to adopt O 1416 as amended on second reader? I apologize, on third reader.
It's second reader as amended.
Oh, as amended on second reader. Is there a second? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Is there a motion to adopt O 1416 on third reader?
So moved.
Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Panalidi,
Aye.
Alderwoman Kendall Charles,
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson,
Aye.
Alderman Littman,
No.
Alderman Kirby,
Aye.
Alderman Arnett,
Aye.
Alderman Budge, Alderman Payne.
Aye.
Thank you.
The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
I believe it's the last legislative item on the agenda, O 2116, regarding Title IV, which is the Elections Code, for purpose of amending and updating certain chapters of the Elections Code.
Is there a motion to adopt O 2716 on first reader? says 027 here.
Yeah, so moved.
Oh,
Wait a minute,
Second.
hold on.
27 is the,
you skipped a page, I think.
I skipped the page. I stand corrected. 02116.
Mhm.
Second reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Oh, take the, all right. There's amendments. I'll let the sponsor speak to them.
Not going through this.
Mr. Mayor, the First Amendment is from the Board of Supervisors of Elections. I don't believe they're here to speak to them. Perhaps I'm mistaken.
All right.
so.
And everyone's iPads are pretty much all grammatical. I can read them out loud if everybody would like. On page 2, line 22, after shall, insert the word provided by. On page 2, line 22, insert the word other means. On page 2, line 22, after mail, strike deliver. And then it says, upon receipt of application, the board shall provide by mail or other means an absentee ballot to the voter entitled to the ballot. That's the First Amendment. Is there a motion to adopt that amendment?
So moved. Do you want to take these all together?
Huh?
Do you want to take these all together?
I would love to take them all together.
Well, so,
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not clear because I'm seeing something different from what you read.
I think the mayor is pulling up the rules proposed amendments. I was referring to the Board of Supervisors of Elections amendments, but he switched to rules.
They are in favor of the rules.
Okay, so we're looking at the rules amendment, not the Board of Supervisors.
I believe that's correct.
Are the rules in the election committees different?
oh,
Yes.
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 And the election boards are different from the ad hoc committee. So there are hundreds of amendments here.
All right, so do you want to take the rules first, or do you want to take the Board of Elections amendments first?
I want to hear something from Mr. Payon.
Alderman Payne?
There,
He wasn't on either.
Committee first.
All right. So there's 4 for the Rules and City Government Committee. And it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on these 4? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, now we'll go on. Give me a second to load this. Yeah, there are a lot. And the Board of Supervisors elections, and there's 11 of them.
Adopt them as a group.
So there's 11 amendments, and I'll look to my colleagues if we want to do these one by one or take them as a group. So I will entertain either motion from the floor.
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion on them? Alderwoman Pindell.
I just have one or two comments. This has been exhaustive. Alderman Lippman and I were there from the beginning. We've had numerous discussions and interactions with Board of Supervisors of Elections, equally, if not more important, with our, court clerk, city clerk. We've had numerous discussions with her and meetings about if we feel comfortable with what's going on, and I'm totally satisfied with what's here.
I'm going to let the city clerk weigh in for a second because I believe she has an opinion on this.
I don't think you can adopt both sets because the Board of Elections amendments went to the Rules Committee and you amended them.
Yes.
So if you adopt, they're going to be conflicting. If you adopt all of theirs and all of the ones that the Rules
Right.
Committee did, they amended the amendments from the Board of Elections.
So if I'm following, the Board of Elections sent 11 amendments that went
Right.
to rules, and they narrowed down to 4.
That is correct.
All right.
But even before that, the ad hoc committee,
But their changes are in the legislation.
Right.
And you guys didn't, your amendments to
So-
change their stuff is also in your amendment.
so I agree with what Alderwoman Pendle Charles said. This has been a very exhaustive process. I think the ad hoc committee did a commendable job. I think the Board of Elections, who will have to live with these rules, came in and made some significant changes from the basic legislation, but we agreed, the Rules Committee agreed with all of the changes recommended by the Board of Appeals, save the tweaks that the Rules Committee itself made, which were the 4 amendments, but we did that in concert with the Board of Elections sitting at the table. Now I mean, to go through it all and describe the nuances, even if this was 7 o'clock, would be extremely complicated. This may be one of those things where you need to trust us, but I think...
You want to table it?
No, because we have to have this done tonight.
Yeah.
We cannot table it.
7 a.m. or p.m.?
Right. I mean, we could literally go for hours on this. Others were here for some of the discussion, so don't take it from Rules Committee.
Alderman Budge?
In order to keep these amendments straight, the city clerk is correct. The Rules Committee amendments do end up amending the Board of Elections amendments.
So you only need to adopt.
So I move that we reconsider the Rules Committee amendments that we just voted on, and
Second.
then postpone them, so that we can consider the Board of Elections amendments
First.
and then comes back to the Rules Committee and implement it and get everything in the right order.
Second.
All right. Seems like a lot of support. Any other discussion?
All right.
Alderwoman Pendo Charles?
And this is not time sensitive?
It is.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. So,
Okay. Gotcha, okay. All right,
So-
thank you.
It's not time sensitive till July, though.
The thrust of the Board of Election
Yeah,
changes
end of July.
dealt largely with absentee ballots, and so did the work from the ad hoc committee. I think what the Board of Elections recommended made much better sense, and they wanted to err on the side of counting every ballot that we could. So erred on the side of assuming that the ballot was correct unless there was overwhelming evidence that a unanimous vote by the Board of Elections. There were other tweaks because not all members of the board are there at all times. So they talked about not having any vote where only one party was represented. So there were safeguards to attempt to keep the process from becoming politicized. They put in an enormous amount of time after the ad hoc committee. Again, the Rules Committee, with a few tweaks, was largely satisfied with what they did, and more importantly, with their underlying rationale, which is we want to give everybody's vote an opportunity to be counted. There are other nuances, like for people who have to cast an emergency ballot, which would only be on the Monday before the election or the day of the election. And that even had to do with, I think, fairly heroic things, such as the staff taking ballots to incapacitated people so they could vote, which is just another example of trying to make sure everybody is franchised in the election. So by going over this quickly, we're not doing justice to an incredible amount of labor that has gone into this. But I personally, and I'll let my colleagues on Rules Committee speak for themselves, quite satisfied with the product that the Elections Board brought to us, save the 4 amendments from rules.
So was that a motion?
Pardon?
That may be the longest motion we've ever entertained.
That wasn't a motion. That was discussion.
Pontificating?
That was discussion.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
So to put it more simply, we accepted the amendments from the Board of Elections.
Except for some.
Except we had 4 little tweaks of our own.
So if you adopt
Period.
theirs first, then
Please
you
support.
amend theirs with yours. It'll be done.
So, I'll go back to making the motion to accept the Board of Supervisors of Elections amendments.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
Now we go back to the reconsidered Rules Committee amendments, which make some tweaks to the Board of Supervisors changes that we just agreed to. And so I will move the Rules Committee amendments now.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Is there a motion to adopt O-2116 as amended on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Is there a motion to adopt O-2116 on third reader?
So moved.
Second?
Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Panalides.
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendel Charles.
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Aye.
Alderman Littman.
Aye.
Alderman Kirby.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
Aye.
Alderman Bud.
Aye.
Alderman Payne.
This legislation.
Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
I believe the next item would be a motion to adjourn. Have we done
Don't we
that?
have to do
Second reader.
One more election.
One more.
There's only a
All
first
right,
reader.
I missed that.
It's O-
First reader on
O27.
R27.
First reader.
O27.
What is
So
it?
it's,
That's right.
all right, Mr. Mayor, I think this is the last item on the agenda now, which is another legislative action, first reader, O-2716 pertaining to election code updates.
Is there a motion to adopt O-2716 on first reader?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
What is it again?
This is updating the election code. It's on first reader.
It was accepted when you approved the agenda. It was added to the agenda.
Oh, okay.
I
We
gave
don't
it
have
to you
in
at the
front of
rules
us.
meeting.
Oh, that's the one he gave. Oh, okay.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. I refer O-2716 on first reader to the Rules and City Government Committee. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Next item on the agenda, I'll defer to Alderman Payone.
Alderman Pam?
Can I say something before we finish? I just wanted to remind everybody that your campaign fund reports are due in the office on July 1st by 4:30 p.m. Just FYI only. Thank you.
Thank you, Mom.
So the next item on the agenda is adjournment.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Good job.